Here now, Brett Tolman, Right on Crime Executive Director and former U.S. Attorney. Brett, every day it's another story, and it's more gruesome and just horrific than the last. And these leaders really don't give a flying damn about the victims or law-abiding residents.
Dagan, you're so right. I mean, you have policymakers that are placing value on the appearance and the emotion of, what is current and any movement that sways them. At its very heart, government's most important role is to keep its citizenry safe, and they're failing. They're failing because they're implementing policies that are not thoughtful, they're not best practices that are working, and they're not considerate of the dangers that men and women are facing as the crime rises. And we're seeing it because that message is very loud and clear from these woke politicians. And that is, we don't take seriously crime because we don't want to appear like we're disparately treating individuals in our inner cities versus, other places in the country.
Police officers being murdered in the line of duty, Connecticut down to Georgia. And what you will see is you're already seeing it, a rapid retirement and a escalating problem recruiting new officers. And so this only gets worse.
Yeah, it's almost at epidemic levels right now. I was with authorities in Texas who were outlining that in some areas they're down 30–40% on their staffing, law enforcement. You have corrections facilities that some are down as low as 60% deficient. So we have a powder keg waiting to go off in this country if we don't make it a priority to implement sound criminal justice policies.
There's San Francisco residents now who are said to be arming themselves with baseball bats and other protective weapons after a drug sobering center opened in the city that's causing a spike in drug use and in crime. I've joked on the air multiple times about, what kind of, am I going to carry a golf club? Am I going to carry a baseball bat? Oh, there's a hockey rink right near where I live. I'll just carry a hockey stick. Or I'll, walk like Jack Torrance in The Shining to frighten people to keep them from attacking me. But it is no joke, because in these cities, like in New York City, you can't get despite the recent Supreme Court ruling, you can't get a concealed carry permit. You're not allowed to protect yourself. There's no way you can protect yourself. And I guarantee you, if you defended yourself in an attack and hit an assailant, you're going to be the one who gets arrested, not the actual perpetrator.
Well, in fact, we saw that very thing happen in New York, right? The storefront owner who tried to protect himself and stabbed an individual that went behind the counter and came at him. And I mean, we are seeing policies that are causing our citizens to say, okay, if you're not going to do something, I'm going to do something about it. Dagan, I would have a bat if I lived in that neighborhood. I would do everything I could to protect myself and my family. And that's why they're doing it. My
doorman has a bat. And when I go outside at 3 o'clock in the morning to walk my dogs, he will come out with a baseball bat. But like on the subway, the glorious people with whom I work, many of them, they live in the outer boroughs, hardworking men and women, they have no way of getting to work other than boarding a subway. And I think so far this year, we're certainly at a record high based on last 25 years of record keeping in New York City about the number of homicides on the transit system, on the subway system. And at least the last suspect, he's been charged with manslaughter, not murder, but he knocked a stranger onto the path of an oncoming train. And fortunately, he's been held without bail, but that is rare.
Yeah, it is rare because the policies, you have this awful, evil mix of, politicians saying we're not going to hold people who we are accusing of a crime. We're not going to hold dangerous individuals in custody. We're going to let them out. And at the same time, we're going to limit how our law-abiding citizens can defend themselves. That recipe is a disaster every time it's been tried historically. And that's what's happening in these big cities.
And it's so disgusting that they try to dismiss the number of murders or number of deaths on the subway system. The transit crime's up more than 40% this year in New York. And they try to dismiss it and say, oh, but we have millions of riders every week or every month. And that somehow that, belittles the families who no longer have fathers or brothers.
Well, that's right. Our objective in the criminal justice system should be that we actually, eliminate crime. We have to remember that victims of crime, you may be able to argue that there's very few of them in contrast to how large the population is, but it doesn't really matter. It's that fear that anybody has now, knowing that they could be the next victim. And it's the predictability of prosecution and investigation and holding someone accountable that really is the deterrent. And if that's gone, then you have no deterrent in your criminal justice system.
Yeah, it's Escape from New York. Snake Plissken, but everywhere, sadly. Brett, thank you so much. Brett Tolman.
Thanks, Dagan.
We'll be right back.